rates are still not quite clear at the moment. Well, are you an employee? Are you extremely freelance? Do you get paid for waiting time? And the example is actually quite a good one that they have. You see people serving at supermarket tills. When they're not doing anything, they're still getting paid. When people who are not doing anything in the gig economy are not doing anything, then they're not getting paid. And it's all this. It's very, very complicated. But what it does show is that, I mean, there's exactly what people do. They go on a website now, and you're talking about, here we have delivery drivers. So it tends to be delivery and driving, the big ones, or what they call low-grade click work, which is basically doing stuff online, data analytics and things like that, which again would defeat somebody like me. But I'm sure there are people who do that quite well, doing surveys and so on. It's growing. It should grow from its bottom around about 300%. That's the last thing we saw. So basically, what these people are doing is taking up the slack of the unemployed in the economy. But it's not necessarily steady work. It is extremely freelance. And if you like that kind of thing and you like that flexibility, then you like that kind of flexibility. But job security, I would suggest, is not what the gig economy is about.
Yeah, obviously online shopping, massive. But we in the UK, we like to physically walk to the shops more than anyone else in Europe, apparently.
We do, but if you look at these, if you look at the bottom line of these figures, all it's doing is they're not quite as bad as they used to be. Yes, we do like going to shop. They don't like doing it in France particularly. That's got the biggest loss. They're down about 39%. We're down about 16, I think it is, 13.7% on the beginning of the pandemic. So it's not quite as bad as people thought it would be. It's good news for the high street. It's good news for high street retailers. I suspect what's going on, I don't know about you, but when I walk down what we used to laughingly call a high street in our nearest city, it's not like that at all because it's basically a shopping centre. But the amount of pop-up shops coming now, so retail space is actually being reused quite imaginatively. I think this is the rethink that's going through UK retail right now. They know that most people, given the choice, obviously would do a quick shop online, whether it be for bits of grocery and so on, or maybe that shirt or your laptop that you've always wanted. But, however, I think people generally quite like the idea, provided they can park and provided it's convenient, just wander around and have a look in the shops and have a look at all the pop-up things which are crowding up in retail spaces now. So, again, it's complete change. It's not like it used to be. But even department stores are having to rethink what their role has to be, given the fact that they've still got the rented space, even though it's empty.
Yeah, the shops that are sort of enduringly robust, of course, supermarkets. Sainsbury's, though, have been warning of real price pressures, and particularly ahead of Christmas, shortages in consumer electronics. Why are the supermarket giving this warning?
That's to do with Argos, really. And I mean, this is unsurprising, isn't it? I mean, basically, it just adds to this narrative we've been talking about, it seems like, for months now, about coming out of the pandemic rather more quickly than people had expected. So you've got supply chain blockages and all the rest of it. I mean, again, some of our local supermarkets where I live in Hampshire, there are shelves clearly empty, and there are people actually going around sort of, pushing what items they have together to make them look slightly less as if the ravaging horde's gone through. It is the supply chain. I don't think it's going to affect food. I think it will certainly affect electronics. And the thing is, don't get this wrong, there's plenty of stuff out there. It's a question of when it actually arrives. Here's a thought. Supposing it starts to arrive in March and April, do you think there might be some massive sales as retailers try to get rid of goods they've already ordered? I suspect that might be might be worth looking at.
Brilliant, Michael. Thank you so much for that this morning. That is business and finance commentator Michael Wilson joining us on the Great British Breakfast.
Yeah, it's 6:45. Let's give you a brief overview of what else is going on today. And the Brexit Minister, Lord Frost, is going to hold talks with Brussels today. It's all in an attempt to resolve disputes over the Northern Ireland Protocol. Now, Lord Frost is going to meet Maros Sefcovic, one of Brussels' top officials. French fishing licences, of course, that's been rumbling on. It's also going to be on the agenda.
Greta Thunberg will lead youth activists in a march across Glasgow today to demand action on climate change. The event, held by Fridays for Future Scotland, will see campaigners strike from school in response to COP26. Local trade unionists as well as council workers are being asked to join in. We've seen reports that 100,000, or they're saying 100,000 people, could turn up for that.
University staff across the UK have voted in favour of strike action over pensions. 76% of university and college union members who voted backed the walkout. The union says lecturers and researchers are angry over cuts to the university's superannuation scheme pensions that could reduce retirement income by 35%.
Waiting lists for victims of rape and serious sexual assault have risen to record highs, with some waiting 2 years for counselling. Nearly 10,000 people in England and Wales waiting for support, according to figures from Rape Crisis. This is double the number from 4 years ago.
And let's have a quick look at today's weather. Fairly cloudy with some bright spells. That's not great for fireworks displays. The best of those will be in the east and the south. There's going to be some patchy rain, mostly in the west and the far north, with the odd heavier outburst. A little milder than yesterday for most of us.
Right, Yorkshire County Cricket Club has been suspended from hosting international matches, England international matches, that it's heading the home until the club can show it has responded adequately to the Azim Rafiq racism row.
Well, the club's board will hold an extraordinary general meeting this morning where a number of board members are expected to resign. Several sponsors have already cut ties with Yorkshire after an internal investigation was found that Rafiq was the victim of racial harassment and bullying, but decided that they wouldn't take any further action against anyone involved. The England and Wales Cricket Board decided to impose a suspension because it was clear the county's club handling of the issue was wholly unacceptable and causing serious reputation to the game.
Yeah, well, GBNews sports editor Mike Bovell joins us now. Mike, there's lots of developments in this story today. We've got this meeting from the board of the cricket club that's taking place later today, and also a former England captain who used to play for Yorkshire also implicated in this report.
Yes, Michael Vaughan, by far and away the highest profile person to now be drawn in to this issue and this controversy, and he, of course, denies any kind of making any kind of racial remarks or anything to do with racism during his time at Yorkshire as both a player and captain of Yorkshire County Cricket Club. He's written a column in today's Daily Telegraph where he has admitted that he was named in this Yorkshire report because obviously the report itself originally was private and not published, and things have been dripping out, leaking out throughout the week.
Yeah. It was heavily redacted, wasn't it, when it was published?
Correct, yeah. So Gary Balance, another former England player who was accused of using the P word on multiple occasions in reference to Azim Rafiq, which he has admitted. But Michael Vaughan, respected broadcaster for the BBC, former England captain, for him to be named in this report, very, very damaging, which is why he's used his Daily Telegraph column today to say, I did not say those things. I have never said anything racist, using the phrase, that it's hit him like a ton of bricks, and he's never experienced anything like it in 30 years in the sport.
Yeah. Azim Rafiq said that this wasn't actually about specific words. It was a culture that basically said the sport was institutionally racist. If that is the case, what should be done, what could be done, particularly for the club? Do you think they've had the right level of sanctions? What could they do to try and remedy it?
Well, that's a very good question. And the ECB last night deciding to suspend Yorkshire from being able to host England matches is huge for the county. A large part of their revenue comes from being able to host England games at Headingley and Leeds. And without that, and given the issues that counties have had in general and the sport has had with their lack of revenue over the past 2 years because of the COVID pandemics, it's going to put massive pressure on Yorkshire County Cricket Club and their finances if they can't host any international cricket next year. They've got more pressing issues. You mentioned the extraordinary general meeting of the club's board, which is taking place later this morning. They have to deal with the fact that sponsors are dropping them like flies, that nobody wants to be associated with them, and that without serious reform, the club's going to struggle to survive in its current form. I would expect as has been touted in the media today, that there will be resignations from the board. What's it going to take to stop the present hemorrhaging of cash, which is going on at the club, which they cannot allow to continue, but the reputational damage that is also being done? I think the ECB stepping in is the right move, and I think it's about the right level of punishment for now for them, but it's how Yorkshire can publicly be seen to take this matter seriously and do something about it. And when you mention institutional racism, how deep does this go within the club, and what can they actually do to prevent it? It's going to take a lot of people going, I feel, before Yorkshire can start to rebuild. And there is, of course, that parliamentary appearance, isn't there? They're going to Azim Rafiq and the chief executive of Yorkshire County Cricket Club. They're going to appear in Parliament in front of. They're going to be questioned by a load of MPs, aren't they? And parliamentary privilege will apply, so they can talk about what's in that redacted report, and they can't. There won't be legal ramifications for Yorkshire. Who else is going to be named? Who else, the details are going to come out. We've seen two high-profile figures, Michael Vaughan, for goodness sake, being named in this report, again stressing that he stresses he's done nothing wrong and has said nothing wrong. But how far does this go? And the fact that you have an England player, former England captain, does that mean that there was an issue within the international dressing room? Is this confined to just Yorkshire? I think if you talk to a lot of Asian players and a lot of overseas players, that they might suggest that that's not the case. Yeah.
Mike, thank you ever so much. Our sports editor, Mike Boville.
You're watching The Great British Breakfast. Good to have you with us this morning. 8 minutes to 7. A 7-year-old girl who suffered severe third-degree burns as a baby after her cock caught fire has raised more than £200,000 for Birmingham Children's Hospital. Elizabeth Soff decided to run a mile every day in July. Our West Midlands reporter Balvinda Sidhu went to meet her.
I'm outside Birmingham Children's Hospital, where an incredible young girl has just presented a cheque of more than £200,000 to the hospital. Elizabeth Soff is only 7 years old, but she has raised all of this money for the hospital. She was just 6 months old when her cock caught fire, which resulted in her suffering third-degree burns to 60% of her body. But she's an incredible and resilient young girl. She joins me now. Elizabeth, how does it feel like that you have managed to raise so much money for the hospital?
Feels great.
Can you tell me how you did it?
I ran 1 mile every day. I was in isolation 2 times. I had to run 73 laps around my garden.
You ran 73 laps around your garden when you were in isolation? That's amazing, Elizabeth. I'm also joined by Dad Liam. Liam, just tell me, Elizabeth has been on an incredible journey. How has this, what impact did, what happened to her as a baby have on her?
Oh, it was a huge impact. Obviously, she looks very different. And she, struggles with movement sometimes because of the scars and the skin grafts. But she just kind of gets up and gets on with it, just becomes part of her life. Any time after an operation, she just bounces back really well. So she just treats everything with positivity and enthusiasm, especially this challenge. I mean, she got up every morning wanting to know when she was doing it, where we were doing it, and the rest of us were pulling straws to see who'd go with her.
How did she manage to raise all of this money? Because it was only £130,000 that you initially wanted to raise.
Yeah, that was the target because that's how much the machine cost. And to be honest, we didn't really think we'd get there. We thought we'd have to do a few more things over a year maybe. So it was amazing. It was the response it got. Thousands of people donated. And
how do you feel about her? You must be so proud.
Yeah. Yeah, we are. How could you not be? She's amazing, She's gone this incredible journey. If you told us 7 years ago, in the days after the fire, that we'd get to this point, it would have been. I just couldn't have imagined it. 7 years ago, she arrived here in one of these ambulances at 6 months old. And we didn't expect her to survive, but the team here put her back together. 70 operations, and this is the result of it. I'm delighted that she's been able to, give something back to the hospital.
When Elizabeth came to us, she was 6 months old, and she was very tiny. and she sustained massive burns back in Qatar. We very rarely see children under the age of 1 year with severe burns. It's very, very, very uncommon. And with Elizabeth was severe, was one of the severest that we have treated here in Birmingham, but she's resilient, and with the family support, and we persevered and we worked very well with her, and I think we have a great outcome today.
Elizabeth has presented the cheque of more than £200,000. What difference is this going to make to other children who've experienced burns?
Well, we hope that it'll help a lot of children. You know, the machine treats any scarring to make them more movable and less visible. So that applies to not just children with burn scars, but also children with scars from operations and scars from trauma or injury. So we're hoping there'll be thousands of children that will benefit from this machine.
Excellent, that's great. Thank you so much, guys. Before you go, Elizabeth, I must ask you, what are you going to be doing to celebrate your amazing achievement?
I don't know.
We'll think of something, I'm sure.
What's your favourite thing to do?
Everything.
Everything. So Elizabeth is going to do everything to celebrate her amazing achievement. She's done a wonderful job raising more than £200,000. What an extraordinary young girl.
Yeah, I love that, everything. Thank goodness you didn't say running as well, because you might just be running for days and days on end. A really inspiring story, and thanks to Bal for bringing that to us as well.
Absolutely. Coming up, we'll be speaking to a doctor about the brand new pill that will hopefully help patients recover from COVID. All that to come after the weather.
Hello, good morning. Another frosty but bright start for southern parts of the UK. Cloudier and milder elsewhere. But actually through today it's dry for most, ahead of some unsettled weather arriving at the weekend. That unsettled weather coming with these weather fronts. But for the time being, those fronts are simply staying enough away to give us a largely dry start, and also a bright start there across East Anglia in the southeast. A touch of frost first thing, a chilly start. Stays bright until lunchtime, but these areas of cloud are sinking southeastwards. And for most it's a cloudier day compared to yesterday. Still some breaks in the east and the south, still some sunshine coming through, and for most it's a dry day, but some spots of rain there for North Wales, North West England and Western Scotland. A milder day as well. We've lost that wind chill. The temperature's a couple of degrees up on yesterday, 11 to 13 Celsius. And into Bonfire Night, well, it's looking reasonable for most, with large parts of the UK staying dry with clear spells. But there will be thicker cloud towards the northwest and some light outbreaks of rain until after midnight, when the rain turns more persistent for northern and western Scotland and the wind picks up as well. Further south, with a bit more of a breeze, a bit more cloud. Certainly a frost-free start to the weekend, 8s and 9s as we start the day on the thermometers. But a lot of cloud and that keen breeze sticking around for Saturday in the south. Further north, wet and windy. Heavy rain for the West Highlands for the first part of Saturday. That wet weather sinking through Northern Ireland, Northern England, and then arriving into Wales by the middle of the afternoon. But the front is weakening, so not a huge amount of rain expected in these places. The wind, though, does pick up behind the weather front. A very windy night indeed to come for northern parts of the UK, particularly northern Scotland, where, combined with some large waves, well, that could cause some coastal impacts. But it is a milder weekend for all of us.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
A very good morning to you. You're waking up to the Great British Breakfast here on GB News with Rosie Wright and Paul Hawkins. And these are the stories that matter this Friday, the 5th of November.
Now, the world's first pill for COVID-19, treatment of it, has been approved for use in the UK. What does it mean for the future treatment against the disease?
With world leaders having departed from COP26 in Glasgow, it's the turn of youth activists to have their say. Greta Thunberg will today lead thousands of campaigners through the streets of the Scottish city to demand action on climate change. But do you think protesting will help solve the crisis?
Also today, the UK and the EU will have more talks over the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's caused some disorder this week, to say the least. We'll have the latest.
And we'll share the incredible story of a 7-year-old girl who's raised more than £200,000 for Birmingham Children's Hospital.
Now, just a few moments ago, we were talking about the Yorkshire County Cricket Club. They've been suspended from hosting England international matches at its Headingley home until the club can show it's responded adequately to the Azim Rafiq racism row.
The club's board will hold an extraordinary general meeting this morning where a number of board members are expected to resign. Several sponsors have already cut ties with Yorkshire after an internal investigation found Rafiq was the victim of racial harassment and bullying, but decided not to take any further action against anyone involved.
The England and Wales Cricket Board decided to impose the suspension because they say it was clear the county's handling of the issue was wholly unacceptable and that it was causing serious damage to the reputation of the game.
Yeah, we're joined now by journalist and broadcaster Mihir Boza. Mihir, really good to have you on the programme this morning. Thank you for joining us. It certainly should be an extraordinary meeting at Yorkshire County Cricket Club later this morning. Are you expecting resignations?
I think there will be some. They'll have to take some action, given the reaction, which is just not in cricket, but it's beyond cricket. It's in politics and so on. They'll have to take. They can't any longer just pull the blanket over their heads. I don't know if the entire Yorkshire board will resign. I doubt that, but I think there will be some resignations, probably of the chief executive, probably of the chairman. I think the chairman is certainly under great pressure.
You know, the question, some of the comments that came out was that actually this wasn't about specific words. It was about the fact that the sport was institutionally racist. Do you agree with that?
Well, what I would say is that there's been, for almost 5 decades, a separation in Yorkshire cricket. When I was looking at Yorkshire cricket, I first started looking in the 70s and 80s. What I found was astounding. I found that the Asian cricketers, and remember, Yorkshire since the 50s have had lots of Asians and Caribbean people come and settle there. They all play cricket, and they were telling me they couldn't get into Yorkshire. And the white cricketers were saying, oh, that's because they don't play in the right clubs. So if you like, there was a sort of Yorkshire type of apartheid system in cricket. And eventually, the Asians set up their own league called the Quad-e-Azam Trophy, named after the founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali's Jinnah, which is still going on. And that, if you like, if you look at it now, that still continues. The Asians are still saying they're playing amongst themselves, their clubs don't get into the Yorkshire League, and the white cricketers are saying that's not the case. And if you look back, it was only in 1992 that Yorkshire played its first non-white cricketer. And again, he wasn't somebody born in Yorkshire, born in God's own country. He was actually born in India. He was an Indian cricketer. So if you like, there's this enormous gap that has not been bridged at any time. What Yorkshire's done has made small gestures, if you like. And eventually there have been some Yorkshire-born cricketers who played, Adil Rashid and so on, but it has taken a long time. And these cricketers have never felt, and Rafiq certainly has never felt, that he was part of the system. And therefore, if you like, let's face it, cricket is a game that is played for the whole day. So a lot of players are in the dressing room, on the playing field together. And if they don't mix with people of another culture, they don't actually know how to relate to them.
Yeah, well, actually, on that note, Mihir, I just wanted to read you a few emails that we've had from someone. Robert's emailed us. He said, what's wrong with being called a POM, as in he's equating POM with the P word that was mentioned in the report. Someone else says, boring, total overreaction, typical of today's woke climate. And Linda says, I'm now so fed up with this overplayed topic that I switch off. Like many people, we are fed up to the back teeth with stories dredged up from history to boost media sales. What do you say to that?
Well, all I can say to Linda is she's got to look at her history. The word POM is used, yes, but it is used in a humorous way. The word P that we don't use on television has been used in a way which is vicious and which is an attack. When people have been attacked, people of Asian origin have been attacked, the P word has been used. So it's not a friendly gesture. It's not a gesture meant to provoke humor and meant to provoke fellowship. I myself have gone through racist attacks where the P word has been used. So if I find people using it, then I think, okay, they might want to attack me. They might want to do harm to me. So therefore, you're not going to take that kind guy. You're not going to take it as a pat on the back and an arm round you and saying, come and have a drink with us.
It's not banter.
No, it's not banter. The person using the word may think it is banter, but he doesn't know the history of it. It's like using the N-word. You don't know the history of it. And therefore, if you think it is banter, the person who's the word is directed at doesn't think it's banter. He's reminded what has happened in the past to him and to others of that colour when that word is used.
In the report, the other thing I'm hearing is that a lot of people are saying we're not talking about Azim Rafiq's use of the word Zimbo and that is an equivalent to the P word. What would you say?
No, I would say the Zimbo word is something that is used about Zimbabwean. And again, the context is important. The history is important. We mustn't forget the history. We would say, oh, well, this is all old history. Yes, it is old history, but history keeps repeating itself. And therefore, you can't put an equivalent about it. One must see how the word was used, what it was meant for, and therefore the person to whom the word is directed, he has to judge as to how it is done. And the person who's doing it must be aware. And one of the problems here is that a lot of people who use these words have no idea what these words mean to the people who it's directed at.
In your mind, what would the club have to do to be able to restore their reputation?
Well, first of all, the club has to stop being in denial. The club, what the club has done, Rafiq made these allegations. They had an investigation, and actually they didn't produce a report. They then had a press release, and then they produced a very, very brief report which didn't give the full story. So what has come out because of journalistic investigations and leaked out. And when that happens, you feel you are covering up. And I think the club has, first of all, to come clean and say, this is what has happened, this is what the report said, this is what we are going to do. Not give the impression that something happened, something really bad happened, but we want to pull the rug over it and pretend it is all right. When you do that, you give the impression you are not taking into account what has happened and you're not coming clean.
Really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you, Mihir. Really appreciate your time. Mihir Boza there, sports journalist, broadcaster, joining us on the Great British Breakfast. Do let us know what you think about what Mihir had to say there. GBviews at gbnews.uk.
It's 10 minutes past 7. You're with the Great British Breakfast. And now, despite a drop in the daily number of positive cases of coronavirus across the UK, the case rate remains high. Well, 37,000 cases were confirmed on Thursday, and the case rate across Britain remains at 413 per 100,000.
Yeah, while infection is still spreading, could a brand new pill to treat COVID help those suffering with it? Well, joining us now is Dr. Mohammed Munir, a lecturer in molecular virology at the University of Lancaster. Really good to see you this morning. Doctor, first of all, this is being described as a game changer. Are they right? Would you use that term?
I think this is certainly a great addition into the armory against COVID-19, particularly for people who cannot be vaccinated because they have either compromised status or their immune response isn't really responding to the vaccination. So this is certainly a great addition to those treatments. And I think one thing I would like to highlight is that we have had other treatments such as monoclonal antibodies, but those needed to be given intravenously, which means the person has to go to hospital to get that treatment. While having a pill that can be given at home twice a day for 5 days, I think this is certainly a great addition in controlling people getting into the hospital or ultimately die. So I would say, yes, it is absolutely a great addition.
In quite specific circumstances, isn't it? People who've tested positive, obviously, because it's to treat coronavirus, but then people who've got an underlying health concern.
Yes, absolutely, because this is, I think that is down to the availability of this specific pill. We have around 500,000 of courses already booked up, but I think that is going to be expanded quite lavishly, depending on how the scale up is going to come up. So at the moment, it is only for those people who have at least one vulnerability, either obesity, over 60, heart disease, or any of the other blood-related issues. So I think very soon it's going to be expanded to other people who might need down the line.
So can you give us an idea, in your mind, how do you think the UK is currently handling the pandemic? It's very difficult to report on the daily number of infections. You have to look at the daily number of deaths. We saw one report this week that said, the number of infections were at the highest it had ever been since May of last year. Do you think we've got a handle on it, or is winter going to look quite bleak?
Well, Rosie, this is very important, and thank you very much for asking this one. If we can draw the all number of cases per day basis into a single chart, you will see a completely different picture what we are having now. What we have had in 3 peaks before is a very high number of cases in a single day, or maybe 1 week or 1.5 weeks, and then we took actions, and then the peaks dropped significantly. But this time, the 4th peak that we are having at the moment is really very high, and it's staying very high up for the last couple of weeks. And at the moment, it seems like plateau, but that is probably just a little bit of soothing effect by the midterm. But as soon as children go back, certainly the number of cases would increase again. And we are having highest number of cases in children than we ever had throughout this pandemic. So I think our action really are predicted by that picture, how we are handling this. And we have to act very quickly. As we've been speaking last week program, that if we don't act now, I think our situation in winter gonna be really challenging.
Really good to speak to you this morning, Mohammed. Thank you very much. Dr. Mohammed Munir there, speaking to us on the Great British Breakfast.
Now, COP26 continues today, and importantly, so do the protests. Taking to the streets to call for action against climate change. Today, we'll see Greta Thunberg, activist Vanessa Negate. Prince Charles has been invited to protest with Greta Thunberg. It is unknown, we are told, if he will take her up on the offer. But we are expecting thousands of people to demonstrate today.
Yeah, it would be something to see Prince Charles there next to Greta Thunberg. Joining us now is Dr. Christian Dunn, Senior Lecturer in Natural Sciences for Bangor University. Christian, really good to see you this morning. First of all,
good morning.
Are these protests really going to make any difference?
Are they going to make difference? Well, it's important that we understand that really none of this would be happening. COP, like it is, would not be happening if the public support for it, if voters were demanding that something was done. So the display of feeling and passion for taking action is important, and it also shows businesses as well that they might have to start, well, they do have to start thinking about how they do business, and they do have to start thinking about sustainability and how they're going to kind of move forward with customers who want change. So in that respect, yes, the protests are important. Will it change what is done inside? That's another issue, I think. And the other issue that I do have with the protests is I think we have to accept that things are beginning, and I use that word advisedly, but beginning to move forward. So we shouldn't just kind of just protest for the sake of protesting. We need to be offering alternatives, and we need to be offering a viable solution for this, which the leaders and the negotiators now at COP are trying to battle their way through. And you can say that they're not doing enough and they're not going fast enough. And I tend to agree with that. But they are starting to move forward. So if you're protesting, fair play. However, what is your solution? You can't just complain about stuff. You've got to offer a solution. And I think that's what the people inside COP are trying to do.
I mean, some of the protesters would say we're really clear on what our solutions are. Let's look at Insulate Britain. I mean, never has there really been a protest movement that is so clear and transparent about what they want to happen.
I think that's a really good point. And something like Insulate Britain, and, let's not even talk about their actions for a second, but what they are saying is very good, actually, because what they're saying, they're not just protesting like some other organizations and kind of maybe some marches are doing. They are actually saying, look, do something. This is the solution. So actually, I like what their message is. Their actions are a completely different issue, but I like the fact that they are offering a solution, which I think the protesters have to start doing. They can't, Greta Thunberg has done a fantastic job at bringing this issue to such a huge audience and a young, passionate audience, and that is fantastic. But what I think we now need to do is start to move to those solutions, and it's no use just slating everything that is going on, because this is such a complex issue. We have to start moving forward. So something like Insulate Britain, at least they want something done, and it's a very important thing. Insulating Britain, that if energy efficiency is so important. We're talking all the time now about cleaner energy, less coal, the end of King Coal, fantastic. Moving forward for different sources of energy, maybe nuclear. But what we most do is get energy efficiency, because that way there's the energy, we just don't need to produce it, which is fantastic. And we can all be more energy efficient, from the way we drive to how we heat our homes, how businesses operate. So that is absolutely crucial.
Really good to see you this morning. Thank you so much, Christian. Appreciate your time. Christian Dunn there from Bangor University. We do want to know what you think, by the way, about what he said. Do you think this protest is going to do anything to help the environment?
Yeah, I have to say, I am related to a very fierce climate campaigner, and she was given the instruction, because she said, I want to strike for school. I don't want to go to school. I want to take part in Greta Thunberg's campaign. And she was
to Glasgow?
No, she's currently in Glasgow. She was on GBNews last week, actually, telling everyone what she was up to. She was given the very clear instruction, that's fine. You don't have to go to school, and you can take part in the Fridays for Future movement, but you've got to practice what you preach. So you need to prove to us first that you actually really care about this with all of your actions, rather than just not going to school. And seriously, she took that mantle and absolutely ran with it, and is now an absolute advocate of all things green. It's actually quite stressful being related to her, because she very much pulls me up on all of those things.
Pretty much everything. Good point, by the way, about Insulate Britain as well. Not that I'm agreeing with their actions or anything, but at least they literally do. It does what it says on the tin, doesn't it? Insulate Britain. That's what they do. So maybe these green protesters need a little bit of help with their messaging.
So do you protest? Do you support the protesters? Do you think they're actually engineering anything? If we hadn't seen sort of Fridays for Future and Insulate Britain, would we be engineering so much progress at COP? Let us know what you think. You can email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yep, we're with you through till 9 this morning. Up next, we'll take you through what's making the front pages of the Friday papers. Before that, let's have a look at the weather.
Hello, good morning. Another frosty but bright start for southern parts of the UK. Cloudier and milder elsewhere, but actually through today it's dry for most, ahead of some unsettled weather arriving at the weekend. That unsettled weather coming with these weather fronts. But for the time being, those fronts are simply staying enough away to give us a largely dry start, and also a bright start there across East Anglia in the southeast. A touch of frost first thing, a chilly start. Stays bright until lunchtime, but these areas of cloud are sinking southeastwards, and for most it's a cloudier day compared to yesterday. Still some breaks in the east and the south, still some sunshine coming through, and for most it's a dry day, but some spots of rain there for North Wales, North West England and Western Scotland. A milder day as well. We've lost that wind chill. The temperature's a couple of degrees up on yesterday, 11 to 13 Celsius. And into Bonfire Night, well, it's looking reasonable for most, with large parts of the UK staying dry with clear spells, but there will be thicker cloud towards the northwest and some light outbreaks of rain until after midnight, when the rain turns more persistent for northern and western Scotland and the wind picks up as well. Further south, with a bit more of a breeze, a bit more cloud, Certainly a frost-free start to the weekend, 8s and 9s as we start the day on the thermometers. But a lot of cloud and that keen breeze sticking around for Saturday in the south, further north, wet and windy, heavy rain for the West Highlands for the first part of Saturday. That wet weather sinking through Northern Ireland, Northern England and then arriving into Wales by the middle of the afternoon. But the front is weakening, so not a huge amount of rain expected in these places. The wind, though, does pick up behind the weather front. A very windy night indeed to come for northern parts of the UK, particularly northern Scotland, where, combined with some large waves, well, that could cause some coastal impacts. But it is a milder weekend for all of us.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to the Great British Breakfast. Time to have a look at what's making today's front pages hot off the press. The Metro have gone with the headline, Tory Owen goal, in the wake of the Owen Paterson U-turn.
Well, unsurprisingly, the story of Owen Paterson dominates most of the front pages. Yeah. The Telegraph say Paterson quits after backlash from MPs. Of course, we heard yesterday from the leader of the House of Commons, Jacob Rees-Mogg, that the vote they just decided was going to be re-voted on Monday. Yeah, day of chaos in Downing Street after the government's most recent U-turn, says the Eye. Again, a comment over the Paterson scandal. The Daily Mail asks, is anyone in charge of Downing Street? The Times has gone with the headline, PM faces party backlash after suspension U-turn, again in reference to the Owen Paterson fiasco. The Guardian says Tories plunged into crisis after Sleaze rules U-turn because there's been sort of cross-party condemnation, including the Conservative Party, of the Prime Minister's actions and decisions. Yep, the Daily Star putting a comedic spin on the same story, leading with, well, we didn't see that U-turn coming, said nobody ever. A different story on the front page of the Mirror. Monster in the morgue reads the front page. David Fuller there, speaking of there, who sexually assaulted, we now know, at least 100 dead women. Yeah, the Daily Express headlines with Game Changer, world's first pill to fight COVID, which we've just been talking about. And The Independent is paying tribute to the actor and presenter Lionel Blair, who passed away last night at the age of 92. Yeah, what a legend. Speaking of legends, journalist and broadcaster Petri Hoskin is with us now. Aha!
And I'm only 91.
Another MP story, Labour Party this time.
Now, obviously, last time I was in here, I addressed Owen Paterson, because I don't want anyone to think that, she's left the Owen Paterson story alone. We talked about that at length. But there is another MP story, which, for her, is reasonably lucky that the Owen Paterson story has taken over all the front pages. And this is a Labour MP, Claudia Webb, MP for Leicester East. Now, she was just spared jail because she was found guilty of threatening behaviour and threatening to throw acid over what appears to be a love rival's face. And she's denying all allegations. She's going to go to appeal. But she only escaped jail. She got a 10-week, 2-year suspended sentence. She's only escaped jail because she had, amongst others, Jeremy Corbyn, John McDonnell and Diane Abbott providing character testimonies for her. And the judge said, your previous good character is what's kept you out of jail. But you have to ask the question about somebody in a public office again using their power, this is definitely a power play, to intimidate and terrify another human being by threatening them, threatening to expose naked photographs of her. I don't know how she had those naked photographs, but she was going to expose those, which is against the law, and then threatening this attack, acid attack. She declares that she phoned this young woman to warn her not to meet with her boyfriend because of COVID restrictions.
Yeah, and we should clarify, by the way, she now sits as an independent, doesn't she?
Yes,
she's no longer
she's a Labour
MP.
She was suspended after yesterday. She was sacked.
Yeah.
So that was her gun. Of course, there may be another by-election if 10% of her constituents agree that she's no longer viable. So it's a very interesting story, and it's one that isn't getting the purchase I think it should.
Because it's been overshadowed by Owen Paterson,
overshadowed Owen Paterson. But this is a nasty, a sleazy, quite revolting story, a behaviour of a woman against another woman. I find it disgusting.
We do have a positive story.
We do.
A potential, a treatment, not potential, approved by the UK medicines regulator for COVID.
The reason I never became a journalist involved with medicines in the NHS is pronouncing them. So it's
Go for it.
Molnupiravir?
Previr, I think. Molnupiravir. That's what I was saying in the headlines yesterday, so let's hope that's right.
Let's hope that's right. Anyway,
a pill. All you need to know is it's a pill for COVID.
Can I just ask, anybody knows why we get stupid names like that?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot...
I'm sure whoever named it doesn't think it's stupid.
I very briefly worked in the medical profession, and doctors and consultants and nurses, they have long words for very simple things.
For very simple things.
Latin names, quite often.
Ridiculous.
I don't know why.
But
anyway...
It's a complicated name, very positive side effects.
Yeah, it seems to be. Over 60s will be offered these pills. You'll just be able to talk to your GP, and people with underlying health issues. And you can then keep them in your house, so you get them delivered or you go and collect them. And if you get symptoms of COVID, you take a course of these tablets, and it halves your chance of hospitalisation. It's an incredibly sort of simple solution, it would appear, to reducing the number of people that end up in hospital this winter. So thumbs up again to the medical professionals. Although they come up with stupid names, they come up with really good ideas.
They do.
Yeah.
Bond. What's happening?
Oh, this is going to start people off. We all know about the furore around James Bond. Who's going to be the next James Bond? Could it be a woman? No, that would be Jane Bond. Oh, no. Yeah. And they've changed... I don't know, I can't...
Well, it's not going to be... It won't be a female Bond.
No.
Because Barbara Broccoli has said she's not going to do it.
She's not going to do it. No. However, the next James Bond books are to be written by a woman.
Oh, my gosh.
It's all right.
Women, know your place. What are you doing? Get back to the kitchen. Who will introduce a diverse cast of new agents for the next stage of the spy story. Kim Sherwood, she's best known for the 2018 novel Testament, will write 3 novels, with the first due to come out in September next year. HarperCollins is publishing.
Wow.
Will you be reading it?
Oh, Probably not. I read Testament.
You've just given it the big
really
up
good.
there, and you're not going to read it.
I'm here just to give the information out.
Perfect.
I don't have to follow it.
From books to television, what's happened at Countdown?
Cat fight at Countdown.
Not physical cats, an argument.
Not actual cats. As you thought.
I thought it was because you did a story about a dog TV
Yeah, but why
channel.
would there be cats
which
on
I'm still trying to think
Countdown?
about programmes, dog-themed programmes for that, but then I thought you were talking about cats.
Oh, you're still planning dog-themed programmes
I still
in your
am,
head?
yes.
Yeah,
I'm
good.
just thinking about
No, well, I suppose there's 9 out of 10 cats do Countdown.
Correct.
Yeah, but anyway, this is an actual cat fight, apparently.
Right.
So gossip says. Rachel Riley she's the mathematician, and she's threatening to quit over Anne Robinson. Because apparently, and I don't know how this could have happened, Anne Robinson muted Rachel's microphone on set.
Right.
There's a lot of apparentlys over here.
Could you mute each other's microphones?
No.
I think if I push Paul
Rosie
over,
would push
maybe.
Paul over. That's how we work on GBNews. Yeah, I just suddenly fall off the chair.
Yeah, and
or
you
I
know
get
that
a
it
kicking on the floor, yeah.
Rosie kicked her up. But the thing about this that is really unedifying, though, because Susie Dent as well is not very happy. Claire Balding has complained that Anne Robinson fat-shamed her. And it's all very nasty, but it's all women, and I find it so unedifying. Grow up.
Is it just that there's a new person that's going to be... It's going to feel a little bit different and everyone just needs to sort of,
Well, no, I mean, Anne Robinson has a difficult reputation. But she's increased ratings. People are talking about Countdown for the first time in years.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's her, I know the person who came up with the wink for her.
Oh,
Who
really?
works at ITV at the moment.
Sorry, hang on, because I thought everyone can wink. How do you come up with a wink for...
For her, because she was so harsh on 15... Was it 15 to 1?
No, Weakest Link.
Weakest Link, that was it.
Goodbye.
Yes, that he made her do that.
Right.
So it's more that he
So they
came up with the
actually had a
idea.
discussion and said, look,
Yes.
you've been a bit harsh and we need to soften
Don't
this somehow.
mock it.
Just give a little wink.
That's exactly the conversation they had.
Wow.
And the guy works at ITV
There you
now.
go, the magic behind TV.
Yeah, the magic.
Final story. We've been talking about potential headaches of getting electronics at Argos, but giving better than receiving, really?
Giving is better than receiving. It's
According
really
to a poll
is.
by a card company.
Yeah, but 60% of adults prefer the feel-good factor of handing over a present to acquiring one.
Yes.
Do you?
Yes. Well, if I was selling things, I would, yes. Yes. Do you know what? It's true.
It is true. I think it is
you
true.
Get, of course, yeah. You get a much better feeling from giving than receiving, don't you? But
I heard a really interesting theory, which is that if you're buying someone a present, you should get something that you really like, and then they're more likely to like it as well. I think the mark of a really good present is one you like so much you don't really want to give away.
Yeah, and in fact, you don't give away. I'm a notorious re-gifter as well.
No,
I am.
You shouldn't do that.
Why?
I thought that was just a dirty rumour. Not about you personally. But just generally. I thought it didn't really happen that
there
people...
are many
that
dirty
people
rumours
re-gift.
about me. No, I mean, if you
do
get
you
given...
say you're re-gifting or do you just pass it off as your own?
Give us an example.
Well, if you
What's the worst
I'm
thing?
not going to do that
you
because
can't.
people might... But if you get given, let's say, a hand cream and you've got 6 hand creams, you're not going to open the 7th one. You just keep it and give it
as a present anyway.
They do.
They do. They've always.
When
was the last time you actually used a hand cream? I don't think I've, apart from when we were aggressively washing our hands aggressively at the start of the pandemic. I don't think I've used a hand cream in a year.
I know, but you see, this is the thing. So what do you do with it? You don't throw it away. What do? You re-gift it.
Right,
Have you
so
not ever done
hand
that?
creams for Petri then. For Christmas.
Yeah, for
Write this down then.
Christmas. Yay.
Petri's Christmas present. Hand creams. Excellent.
Petri,
I like
thank
a
you
hand
very
cream, by
much.
the way.
You like a hand cream. People who've given you a hand cream are going to be absolutely
I'm sorry.
appalled.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, right. Hey.
Petri, brilliant to have you on the programme. Thank you ever so much. Let's move on. It's 25 to 8. Of course, your views on any of those stories, do get in touch. You can email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But this is a really inspiring story. A 7-year-old girl who suffered third-degree burns as a baby when her cot caught fire. She's raised more than £200,000 for Birmingham Children's Hospital.
Yeah, Elizabeth Soft decided to run a mile every day in July. Our West West Midlands reporter Balvinder Sidhu went to meet her, and there's a warning that you might find some of these pictures upsetting.
I'm outside Birmingham Children's Hospital, where an incredible young girl has just presented a cheque of more than £200,000 to the hospital. Elizabeth Soff is only 7 years old, but she has raised all of this money for the hospital. She was just 6 months old when her cot caught fire, which resulted in her suffering third-degree burns to 60% of her body. But she's an incredible and resilient young girl. She joins me now. Elizabeth, how does it feel like that you have managed to raise so much money for the hospital?
Feels great.
Can you tell me how you did it?
I ran 1 mile every day. I was in isolation 2 times. I had to run 73 laps around my garden.
You ran 73 laps around your garden when you were in isolation. That's amazing, Elizabeth. I'm also joined by Dad Liam. Liam, just tell me, Elizabeth has been on an incredible journey. How has this, what impact did, what happened to her as a baby have on her?
Oh, it was a huge impact. Obviously, she looks very different. And she, struggles with movement sometimes because of the scars and the skin grafts. But she just kind of gets up and gets on with it, just becomes part of her life. Any time after an operation, she just bounces back really well. So she just treats everything with positivity and enthusiasm, especially this challenge. I mean, she got up every morning wanting to know when she was doing it, where we were doing it, and the rest of us were pulling straws to see who'd go with her.
How did she manage to raise all of this money? Because it was only £130,000 that you initially wanted to raise.
Yeah, that was the target because that's how much the machine cost. And to be honest, we didn't really think we'd get there. We thought we'd have to do a few more things over a year maybe. So it was amazing. It was the response it got. Thousands of people donated.
And how do you feel about her? You must be so proud.
Yeah. Yeah, we are. How could you not be? She's amazing, She's gone this incredible journey. If you told us 7 years ago, in the days after the fire, that we'd get to this point, it would have been. I just couldn't have imagined it. 7 years ago, she arrived here in one of these ambulances at 6 months old. And we didn't expect her to survive, but the team here put her back together. 70 operations, and this is the result of it. I'm delighted that she's been able to, give something back to the hospital.
When Elizabeth came to us, she was 6 months old, and she was very tiny, and she sustained massive burns back in Qatar. We very rarely see children under the age of 1 year with severe burns. It's very, very, very uncommon. And with Elizabeth was severe, was one of the severest that we have treated here in Birmingham. But she's resilient, and with the family support, and we persevered and worked very well with her, and I think we have a great outcome today.
Elizabeth has presented the cheque of more than £200,000. What difference is this going to make to other children who've experienced burns?
Well, we hope that it'll help a lot of children. The machine treats any scarring to make them more movable and less visible. So that applies to not just children with burn scars, but also children with scars from operations and scars from trauma or injury. So we're hoping there'll be thousands of children that will benefit from this machine.
Excellent, that's great. Thank you so much, guys. Before you go, Elizabeth, I must ask you, what are you going to be doing to celebrate your amazing achievement?
I don't know.
We'll think of something, I'm sure.
What's your favourite thing to do?
Everything.
Everything. So Elizabeth is going to do everything to celebrate her amazing achievement. She's done a wonderful job raising more than £200,000. What an extraordinary young girl.
And I just really hope everything means resting and a little bit of a break from running. Imagine that. That's more running I think I'd be up to. She's
incredibly inspirational.
Absolutely brilliant. Thanks to Bal for bringing us that story as well.
Yeah, coming up, could today be the day when Lord Frost finally sorts out the Northern Ireland Protocol in one day? We'll be live in Northern Ireland to find out how that's affecting local farms.
I just did that thing where I used my foot and accidentally made my chair
Did
go
you just
down.
drop that? Look at that, look at you down there. Right, we'll sort out Rosie's chair after this.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. We're sorted.
You're on
I've done it again.
What's happened to your chair now?
I think it must be. Broken.
New chair for Rosie. There we go. Just perch on that.
I'm going to lean forward a little bit. Well, let's move on from furniture and take a look at some of the day's top business stories. Michael Wilson joins us again on the programme. Very good morning to you, Michael. Just explain to us. There's been some movement. What's happening in the steel industry?
Well, the thing is that the saviour of steel, as he was called at some stage, Sanjeev Gupta, has this company called Liberty Steel, and it's part of his organisation. And its biggest investor was Greenshill, which, as you know, is one of these companies which went bust, and there's all sorts of legal problems with it and so on. So basically, MPs are looking at Sanjeev Gupta and the workings of his company. They're saying that there are governance problems with it. Again, we don't really know the detail of this. They're talking in vague terms about accountability and who oversees what and so on. I mean, that's the small part of it, although it's big for Liberty Steel. The actual fact is that steel making in this country has always been fairly problematic since the mid-70s, really, since the Japanese mass-produced steel. This is what we were doing here, and it's undergone a lot of changes. These big industries tend to. It's been private, it's been public, it's been looked after, it's been nationalised. Many jobs have been lost, some have been gained. Mr. Gupta actually got a lot of support from the steel industry, buying up a lot of unloved steel plants from abroad as well as in the UK. It's a difficult one, this, not so much the specific surroundings of Liberty Steel, but the general market for steel at the moment. We think that there's a good market for it because of the infrastructure plans in the United States and so on. But again, where that's going to be supplied from, nobody really knows. That depends on trade deals. So it's one of these big industries. It's very much felt to be part of the UK. The fact of the matter is that things have moved on since we were steel kings all those years ago.
Yeah, well, you also want to talk about apparently there's some pressure, I don't know from who, to increase pay as business confidence and labour markets hit. Who wants to increase this in the private or the public sector?
as far as I can tell, this is a survey from Royal Bank of Scotland, and I think it applies to Scotland, but I think we can certainly apply it to the rest of the UK as well. And what's happening is there's a shortage of workers. I mean, we know this in this country, there's 1 million job vacancies and so on. Those who are actually going up to employers can now say, actually, I know that you're suffering from staff shortages. Here I am, but I'm not prepared to take this amount of money for the work that I do. That's the pressure, and I suspect we'll see a lot more of that now. I was reading something about one of the coffee shop owners saying, "Sure, you want to spend £9 on a cup of coffee? I'll pay people more." It's that kind of thing. So we're seeing a lot of jockeying for position right now, but it is very much a sort of a buyer's market, really. If you're an employee and you're going to a company, your prospective employee going to a company, then quite right, you should ask for more, because the company will need to pay, because they're suffering from staff shortages, straight supply and demand.
Let's talk about Metro Bank, because the shares have really surged after that confirmation that the takeover approach has happened by the US private equity giant. When we say the shares have surged, by how much? How significant is it?
Well, I think they've surged about about a third, haven't they? And quite right too. Metro Bank is one of these. It started about 10 years ago, and it was the first real big high street bank to take on for about 100 years, basically. The fact of the matter is that it's about money. Now, of course, all banks are about money, but this is about accessibility and all the rest of it. The kind of thing that the big banks are actually slightly moving away from. Metro Bank distinguished itself when it started. I remember when it started having little bowls of water for your dog, should you wish to take that with you as you went in. And it was also open on Saturdays and Sundays. And it didn't have that rather annoying thing that a lot of, do you remember high street banks used to close at, was it 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon, so that they could count up all the cash and all that kind of stuff, so things have actually moved on. But Metro Bank is what's called it's a sort of challenger bank. It's not strictly just online, as a lot of the real challenger banks are. It's got its own premises and so on. And it had an accounting problem in 2019. Basically, what banks have to do is to have a big capital cushion. That's what the financial crisis of 2008-9 taught us, and that's what Metro Bank struggled with. Given this new takeover bid from the private equity company Carlyle, the United States one, it may be quite hopeful for it. It tried to change the shape of UK banking. It sort of did, but I do feel as though what's really changed it is online activity, rather than somewhere you can nip into with your dog to have a drink of water.
Perfect. Excellent. Really good to talk to you this morning, Michael. Thank you so much. Business and finance commentator Michael Wilson there on the Great British Breakfast. Right, lots of you getting in touch on various things that we're talking about on the programme this morning. Obviously, it's November the 5th. No one ever forgets that, thanks to that irritating tune. It's Bonfire Night tonight, and we've been talking about eco-bonfires, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got an interesting story for you in a couple of minutes' time about a bonfire night in London that's happening without a bonfire. Someone said, "Stop the world, I want to get off." And someone else, "The world is going mad, eco-bonfires, no sparklers." I'm actually going to a fireworks display in London this weekend, and I hate to say it to the people who are anti-fireworks, and that's a little bit what our report coming up has got on it. I'm really looking forward to it, something I missed so much last year. What we are seeing as well, of course, is the sort of advent of drone displays taking over from fireworks ones, which I think I should be largely in support of.
Yeah, it is weird, though. I mean, if we get carbon emissions down elsewhere, we don't need to think so much about one night of the year where we all burn a bonfire. So I can kind of see why people are getting their knickers in a twist about eco-bonfire. Essentially what they're going to do is have it on a screen, aren't they? They're going to have the bonfire on a screen and then warm themselves around it. So,
well, you can have your view on that when we bring you that story. Let's give you a brief overview, though, of what else is going on today before we get there. The Brexit Minister, Lord Frost, is going to hold talks with Brussels today in an attempt, again, to resolve disputes over the Northern Ireland Protocol. Well, Lord Frost will meet with Maroš Šefčovič, one of Brussels' top officials. French fishing licences, that's been a major headache. That's also going to be on the table too.
Yeah, meanwhile, speaking of climate change, Greta Thunberg will lead youth activists in a march across Glasgow today. They're going to demand action on climate change. The event held by Fridays for Future Scotland will see campaigners strike from school in response to COP26. Local trade unionists, as well as council workers, are also being asked to join in.
University staff across the UK have voted in favour of strike action over pensions. 76% of university and college union members who voted backed the walkout. The union says lecturers and researchers are angry over cuts to the university's pension scheme, which could reduce retirement income by 35%.
Waiting lists for victims of rape and serious sexual assault have risen to record highs, with some waiting 2 years for counselling. Nearly 10,000 people in England and Wales are waiting for support. That's according to figures from Rape Crisis. This is double the number from 4 years ago.
And a quick look at the weather today. Fairly cloudy, which isn't good news for Bonfire Night. Some bright spells, though, and the best of those are going to be in the east and the south. There's going to be patchy rain, mostly in the west and the far north, with the odd heavier burst. A little milder than yesterday for most of us.
Right, then, let's bring you more then on that Eco Bonfire Night. This year, of course, taking place with a lot more celebrations because last year, of course, we were in lockdown. But this display will be a little different. Our London reporter Alice Porter has more.
When it comes to fireworks, Londoners know how to put on a good display. But while the bright lights draw people together, others say they can be bad for the environment.
I'm in Dulwich in South London, and it's the sports club here which is hosting what is believed to be the UK's first green fireworks display. And that means instead of the traditional guy burning on the bonfire will be shown virtually on a massive screen. Fireworks are still happening, but sparklers are strictly not allowed. The event has been as popular as ever and has completely sold out. But do people really want to go to a bonfire night without the bonfire?
I don't think I'd go. Not enough bang for your buck, I suspect.
A bonfire on a screen? That's a bit odd, isn't it? Yeah. So you're going to stand there and warm your hands by a screen? Yeah. No, anything that helps the environment, yes, it's a step in the right direction, but there's got to be a balance.
I think it's a brilliant idea. Anything that can help the environment, because presumably if you've got a bonfire going and fireworks, you're releasing pollutants into the air anyway, so that's not a good idea, is it? So anything that can be done by virtual reality is probably a really good idea.
When the new year of 2020 was celebrated in London, the lack of wind slowed the dispersion of fireworks smoke and led to an air pollution incident. To find out if fireworks are really that bad for the environment, I went back to school for a chemistry experiment.
Magnesium is a real part of fireworks. And you can see that stunning sort of plume of smoke that comes off it. And that smoke is interesting because you can inhale it. And because the particles are so fine, they can actually go into your lungs, right, and lodge there.
So fireworks can be bad, but what about sparklers and what about bonfires?
Back in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, when everyone had a fire, a coal fire at home, the fog in London caused literally thousands of people to die every year. Now, what's interesting is that, again, bonfires are, in a sense, replicating those kinds of conditions, slightly different, but nevertheless producing material which will lodge into people's lungs. We have to remember there are lots of people around who do have lung disease, who have lung problems, and particularly in these times of COVID, who have serious respiratory problems after effects. And so we need to think in a kind of bigger way about the impacts of this. And with bonfires, they're fun, but you know what? They're probably too costly in terms of their effects.
With many countries increasingly turning to drones for their displays, including at this year's Olympics in Tokyo, the future of fireworks may be a little more green. Alice Porter, GB News.
Yeah, lots of you getting in touch with us on that this morning. Drop us a line, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and other things we're talking about, right?
Yeah, well, Graham's got in touch saying, why is nothing being said about the volcano that's still erupting on the Spanish island? It's been erupting for 8 weeks now. It's been erupting for weeks, so thousands of tonnes of CO2 have been released. We can't control our climate. End of.
Yeah, true. Yeah, we can't tell the volcano to stop emitting gases. But we can probably sort our own stuff out, I would have thought.
But would you go to a bonfire night without a bonfire? You can let us know on that. Also, of course, front page of all of the papers this morning, pretty much, is that sort of absolute backlash to the government, to also Boris Johnson over their handling of the Owen Paterson case. The MP who was found to have breached lobbying rules was given a 30-day suspension from the Commons. But as that came up for debate, MPs said, OK, we're going to change the rules. There was such backlash to that Jacob Rees-Mogg came up in the House of Commons yesterday and said, OK, scratch that, we're going to revote on it again on Monday. And then what happened? Owen Paterson resigned. Lots of you getting in touch on this.
Yeah. Martin says, why is everyone getting their underwear in a twist over this? Appreciate the word underwear, because I've been pulled up, actually, for using the word knickers in a twist earlier. Apparently it was misogynistic, says one of our viewers. So thanks for that. Yeah, the fact is it doesn't affect anyone except those in Westminster, yet people are getting apoplectic over it. It won't affect Joe Public's life one jot. That's what Martin says.
Mark in East Dorset, very good morning to you, said, biggest mistake so far, makes them look bad and corrupt to suit them. The people of this country are not stupid and naive. I say this as a lifelong Conservative supporter. The stupidity of this is beggars belief.
Yeah, and Karen thinks we should move on from it. She says it's not great, but he's resigned now. Next! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Keep your views coming in. And speaking of what's coming next, before 9 this morning, do you think billionaires are plundering the planet with space trips? Apparently that's what Oxfam is saying. We'll be joined by Travis Frayne, a survivor of the Westminster Bridge terror attacks, also who's launched a platform to counter radicalisation. All that to come after this.
Hello, good morning. Another frosty but bright start for southern parts of the UK. Cloudier and milder elsewhere, but actually through today it's dry for most ahead of some unsettled weather arriving at the weekend. That unsettled weather coming with these weather fronts. But for the time being, those fronts are simply staying enough away to give us a largely dry start, and also a bright start there across East Anglia in the southeast. A touch of frost first thing, a chilly start. Stays bright until lunchtime, but these areas of cloud are sinking southeastwards, and for most it's a cloudier day compared to yesterday. Still some breaks in the east and the south, still some sunshine coming through, and for most it's a dry day, but some spots of rain there for North Wales, North West England and Western Scotland. A milder day as well. We've lost that wind chill. The temperature's a couple of degrees up on yesterday, 11 to 13 Celsius. And into Bonfire Night, well, it's looking reasonable for most, with large parts of the UK staying dry with clear spells, but there will be thicker cloud towards the northwest and some light outbreaks of rain until after midnight, when the rain turns more persistent for northern and western Scotland and the wind picks up as well. Further south, with a bit more of a breeze, a bit more cloud. Certainly a frost-free start to the weekend, 8s and 9s as we start the day on the thermometers. But a lot of cloud and that keen breeze sticking around for Saturday in the south. Further north, wet and windy. Heavy rain for the West Highlands for the first part of Saturday. That wet weather sinking through Northern Ireland, Northern England, and then arriving into Wales by the middle of the afternoon. But the front is weakening, so not a huge amount of rain expected in these places. The wind, though, does pick up behind the weather front. A very windy night indeed to come for northern parts of the UK, particularly northern Scotland, where, combined with some large waves, well, that could cause some coastal impacts. But it is a milder weekend for all of us.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
A very good morning. It's 8 o'clock. You're waking up to the Great British Breakfast here on GB News this morning with Paul Hawkins and me, Rosie Wright. Well, these are the stories that matter this Friday, the 5th of November.
With world leaders having departed from COP26 in Glasgow, it's the turn of youth activists to have their say. Swedish teenager Greta Thunberg will today lead thousands of campaigners through the streets of Glasgow to demand action on climate change. But do you think protesting will help solve the crisis?
Also today, the UK and the EU will have more talks over the Northern Ireland Protocol, which has caused, I think we could say, some disorder this week. We'll have the latest on that.
Yeah, also a survivor of the Westminster Bridge attack has launched a platform featuring testimonies from terror victims in an attempt to try to counter radicalisation. Travis Frayne started the Resilience Unity project during lockdown. He'll be joining us shortly to talk more about the platform.
And remember the 5th of November. Of course, it's Guy Fawkes Night tonight. One event in London, though, is going green. It's a bonfire night. Get ready. With that, those pictures actually give a misleading interpretation. A bonfire night without the bonfire.
Yeah, just the bon.
So what do you make of that?
But we start with trips to space by very rich people. Charity campaigners have hit back at the space trips of Jeff Bezos, saying they are irreversibly damaging the environment of the planet they are trying to leave.
Well, as Bezos, Sir Richard Branson, Elon Musk, they're also building up space businesses using huge amount of resource in order to do so. Well, speaking at the COP26 conference, Bezos promised to spend $10 billion fighting climate change through the Bezos Earth Fund. Well, Bezos' company Amazon has also been criticised in the past by its workers over its record on climate change.
Yeah, well, to look at the impact of these space trips and the responsibility of the super rich to help the environment is Tim Gore, head of the Low Carbon and Circular Economy Programme. Tim, good to see you this morning. First of all, can you explain for us how damaging to the environment one of these trips to space is? I assume it's the fuel in the rockets, right? That's the main cause.
Sorry.
Bless you. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Well, yeah, for sure. These rockets burn an incredible amount of fuel in a very short amount of time. I mean, there's estimates that, you know, just one of these sort of space tourism trips for about 10 minutes burns more carbon than somebody in the poorest billion people on the planet will emit in their entire lifetime. So, you know, it's the inequality which is really striking here. It's obscene. You know, we're trying to tackle climate change, and at the same time, we've got a small number of extremely rich people going around with carbon footprints that are, frankly, thousands of times higher than those of the poorest people on the planet. So that can't continue.
What did you make of the Prince's comments, basically saying to these people, you know, positioning themselves for space tourism, that actually we needed to focus on saving our own planet before discovering others?
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, to be honest, we don't need to be hearing from the world's richest men about how to save the planet. Or, you know, I think Bezos was saying that, you know, he realized the fragility of the Earth when he got up there in space and looked down on it. Well, you only need to talk to people in the poorest half of the world population, people that are struggling to get by, people that are on the front lines of floods and droughts and struggling to grow crops. They're the ones that know already all about the fragility of the planet. They know how dangerous climate change is for them and their livelihoods. Those are the people we need to be listening to, not the richest people going into space.
Yeah, but he is putting $10 billion into fighting climate change. That is an enormous amount of money.
Yeah, look, and you know, every contribution is welcome. But frankly, if we've got to the point where we're relying on handouts, charity, from rich people to tackle climate change, then something's gone wrong. What we need are fair tax systems that make sure that that money goes to governments that can spend it in a way that is accountable to people. Frankly, we need to make sure that it's the people on the front lines of the climate crisis, that they know how that money is being spent, that they can control how it's being spent. And that has to come through taxation and government spending rather than handouts from rich people, albeit 10 billion is a big sum of money. It's better that he provides that than that he doesn't. But that's only ever going to be a sticking plaster. What we need are fair tax systems to make sure that governments have got the resources they need to fight the climate crisis.
Yeah, but in an ideal world, that would be fantastic, Tim. But that involves politics, that involves electoral cycles. That's going to take much longer than a bloke with loads of money just handing it over.
Well, sure. And, we're not going to solve climate change overnight, unfortunately. It's not going to be, there's no silver bullet here. This is about electing governments that...
We need to solve it overnight. That's what we're being told, that it's really urgent. So actually, someone handing over a load of cash it's really practical.
As I say, every contribution is welcome, but we need to put in place, this isn't going to go away. This is about shifting the way that we all live our lives, the way we run our economy over the next 10, 20, 30 years. Of course, the fact that we've done nothing or we haven't done enough for the last 20 years has made it really urgent, but we still need to plan for the long term here. We've got to put in place the processes and the systems that we need to get to grips with this problem. And that's why we can't allow things like space tourism to take root and to really grow. We've got to make sure that we are putting in place systems so that the richest are paying their fair share, so that we can all make the changes that we need to cope with the climate crisis.
A couple of the things that have been announced at COP already. So Rishi Sunak has said he wants to rewire basically the financial economy to make sure that it's got a green focus. We heard yesterday these plans to phase out coal. The UK is part of one of the countries who've pledged to do exactly that by sometime in the 2030s. When you hear those types of announcements, do you feel like, from someone who knows far more about this than we do, yes, that's what we need, we're on the way, or is it still, this is nowhere near enough?
We know that nothing that's been put on the table so far is enough. We know that because scientists can project where the emissions are likely to be by 2030, and that's where we can see that they are off track from where we need to be, and still quite substantially. So we are making progress. I think that's important to note. That the very worst scenarios of climate change this century, it looks like we're steering away from those, but still. The warming of the planet that we're heading towards is catastrophic still for particularly for the world's poorest people. So there's much more that needs to be done. There's still too much greenwash around, and we still are not getting the level of action that is really required. So yes, we need to move away from coal, but at the same time, there's still prevarication about whether or not even the UK is going to open a new coal mine itself. So, of course, we need to remain vigilant. We need to keep pushing. There's still much more that we need to do.
Really good to talk to you this morning, Tim. Thank you so much for joining us. Right, you're on the Great British Breakfast. Here's what else is going on today.
Yeah, 8 minutes past 8 now. Showbiz veteran Lionel Blair has died at the age of 92. He had, as you know, a successful career on the small screen and stage. I think he's probably best known for his role on the ITV game show Give Us a Clue. Figures from around the world of entertainment have been paying tribute to the star.
Former England cricket captain Michael Vaughan has denied making racist remarks to his Yorkshire teammate Azim Rafiq and 2 other Asian players. And we're just hearing now that Roger Hutton has announced his resignation as chairman of Yorkshire County Cricket Club. The chairman, Roger Hutton, has announced his resignation in the wake of the Azim Rafiq racism allegations. That news breaking. We'll have more on that throughout the day here on GB News.
Now, a new Duke of Edinburgh-style award scheme is going to be introduced in schools to recognise pupils' efforts to protect the environment. The Education Secretary, Naheem Zahawi, will announce it later today, and it's part of a series of plans aimed at putting climate change at the heart of education. I think a lot of people in school would say it's we that need to be educated, not them. They're the ones banging the drum about this. But lots of pupils will be able to participate in what's going to be called the Climate Leaders Award.
Yeah, and speaking of the more immediate climate, out there, fairly cloudy with some bright spells. The best of these in the east and the south. Some patchy rain, mostly in the west and far north, with the odd heavier burst a little milder than yesterday for most.
Now, the Brexit Minister, Lord Frost, is going to resume face-to-face talks in Brussels later today in the latest attempt to resolve the impasse over the Northern Ireland Protocol.
He'll meet with European Commission Vice President Maros Šefčovič to focus on finding a way of preventing further pressure on product checks at Northern Irish ports.
Well, last night, Lord Frost held talks with French ministers about the recent rout over fishing licences, but also brought up the ongoing protocol problems.
Yeah, meanwhile, there's been further trouble this week in Northern Ireland as tensions continue, whilst both sides attempt to find a solution to the dispute. Well, our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie, joins us now. Dougie, just tell us how bad this disorder has been over the week and why it's happening.
Well, this trouble has been low level. There has been a bus burnt outside Newton Ards. 2 armed men got onto a bus, threw fuel on it and set it on fire. And just within the last 24 hours, right where I'm standing now, is an interface between nationalists West Belfast behind me and the Loyalist Unionist West Belfast in front of me. Now, they were having an anti-Northern Ireland Protocol rally in the Loyalist side when trouble flared between both sides. There were 2 arrests of children, we might add, and actually the 2 arrests we believe were from the nationalist side, and we also believe that these children weren't even from this area, so that puts another spin on it altogether. These loyalist or unionist areas here are very like those in the north of England. They believe that their culture, they're having to apologise for it, that it's constantly not being recognised, and that everybody else's culture matters more than theirs. They are working classes. Now, when you put the Northern Ireland Protocol into place that takes away any democracy or political capital that they may have, it causes violence. And I caught up with one political activist to find out just what his thoughts were.
For over 2 decades, our community has been told that post the Belfast Agreement, Northern Ireland's political institutions are meant to be based upon the premise of cross-community consent. This protocol doesn't have the consent of a solitary unionist elected representative at any level, from council to the House of Lords within Northern Ireland. So there's a massive campaign going on against that politically. There has been a protest campaign going on against that, and unfortunately sometimes the anger and frustrations have boiled over into the streets into violence, which nobody wants to see, but there is a problem here because many people within the unionist and loyalist community and legitimately would see that the belief that the threat of nationalist violence, I mean, we remember Leo Varadkar went to the EU and waved about newspaper articles about IRA bombs. We remember the SDLP talked about civil disobedience at a minimum if there was to be so much as CCTV on the border, and unionists and loyalists believe that this threat of nationalist violence or nationalist civil disobedience was rewarded by putting a border in the Irish Sea. So unfortunately, when you set that precedent, many people in unionist and loyalist communities look at it in a very zero-sum way and say, well, I mean, if the threat of violence was good enough to prevent a land border, why shouldn't the same tactic be good enough to prevent a sea border? And I'm not advocating that, but I make the point to say it's a very logical conclusion to come to, and it's a very difficult conclusion to argue against because it does seem to be strongly based on fact and logic.
In the fairness, we did ask the SDLP and the Alliance Party to come on and give us their comments, but they didn't want to appear here. They obviously don't like being asked hard questions in and around the protocol. Now, tomorrow or today, actually, Lord Frost will appear in Brussels to discuss the protocol amongst many other things with his European counterparts. And there is rumours that Article 16 may be triggered. Now, that would suit the unionist population, but it would leave the Irish Republic, our neighbours here, in a very serious situation. And Micheál Martin, the Irish Taoiseach, or Prime Minister, if you like, was answering questions in this in the Dáil, and just watch his body language.
The Commission has acted in good faith, and a good faith response is required from the United Kingdom government. And in my view, it would be irresponsible, it would be unwise, and it would be reckless to invoke Article 16 as a response to the proposals from the European Commission. And I think if such an act was to be taken by the British government, I think it would have far-reaching implications for the relationship between the United Kingdom and the European Union. I think it also would have implications for the relationship between the United Kingdom government and the Irish government, because such an action would not be in accordance with the spirit of partnership that has informed the peace process from the get-go, and that has informed the creation of the entire architecture that underpins the Good Friday Agreement.
Well, you can hear him talking about the Good Friday Agreement there. Unionists say it's nothing to do with the Good Friday Agreement. It's all about the protection of the single market. Now, Micheál Martin is, if you listen to that, he is quite threatening in his language, but I also think he is very, very nervous because he heads up a very shaky coalition government in the Republic of Ireland. And the largest party in the Republic is that of Sinn Féin, the political wing of the IRA. And if his government was to collapse there, elections were come to place, we could be looking at Sinn Féin in power in the Republic of Ireland. Now, 9/11 changed terrorism throughout the world. Any government seen to be backing or looking towards terrorists or even hiding or funding them are, well, they face political excommunication. And that is a lot of political capital that Sinn Féin must consider before it would go down any such roads.
Great stuff. Thank you, Doogie. That's our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie, with the latest on the discussions on the Northern Ireland Protocol, part of the Brexit withdrawal agreement.
It's 16 minutes past 8. You're with the Great British Breakfast, and coming up here on the programme, remember the 5th of November. It's Bonfire Night. Parties across the UK return. Of course, they were cancelled last year. We went into lockdown exactly this time last year. But what about a bonfire night without the bonfire?
Yeah, so it's just a night.
Or as we said earlier,
a night.
Just the bon.
Just the bon, no fire.
Our reporter Alice Porter will be telling us more just after this.
Hello, good morning. Another frosty but bright start for southern parts of the UK. Cloudier and milder elsewhere, but actually through today it's dry for most ahead of some unsettled weather arriving at the weekend. That unsettled weather coming with these weather fronts. But for the time being, those fronts are simply staying enough away to give us a largely dry start, and also a bright start there across East Anglia in the southeast. A touch of frost first thing, a chilly start. Stays bright until lunchtime, but these areas of cloud are sinking southeastwards, and for most it's a cloudier day compared to yesterday. Still some breaks in the east and the south, still some sunshine coming through, and for most it's a dry day, but some spots of rain there for North Wales, North West England and Western Scotland. A milder day as well. We've lost that wind chill. The temperature's a couple of degrees up on yesterday, 11 to 13 Celsius. And into Bonfire Night, well, it's looking reasonable for most, with large parts of the UK staying dry with clear spells, but there will be thicker cloud towards the northwest and some light outbreaks of rain until after midnight, when the rain turns more persistent for northern and western Scotland and the wind picks up as well. Further south, with a bit more of a breeze, a bit more cloud. Certainly a frost-free start to the weekend, 8s and 9s as we start the day on the thermometers. But a lot of cloud and that keen breeze sticking around for Saturday in the south. Further north, wet and windy. Heavy rain for the West Highlands for the first part of Saturday. That wet weather sinking through Northern Ireland, Northern England, and then arriving into Wales by the middle of the afternoon. But the front is weakening, so not a huge amount of rain expected in these places. The wind, though, does pick up behind the weather front. A very windy night indeed to come for northern parts of the UK, particularly northern Scotland, where, combined with some large waves, well, that could cause some coastal impacts. But it is a milder weekend for all of us.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to the programme, 20 minutes past 8. Now, on the Great British Breakfast, we want to showcase some of the most amazing people in this country, and today we are delighted to be joined by Travis Frayne, a survivor from the Westminster terror attack, who's launching a new anti-radicalisation platform. The Resilience in Unity project will allow victims of terror attacks to share their experiences, helping other survivors to also try and stop the radicalisation of people to terrorist causes. Well, we are delighted to say that Travis is in the studio with us, as you've just seen. Thank you so much for coming in. The first thing, you know, if you're happy talking about it, just take us back to that experience you went through. What happened? Where were you?
Sure. So as I mentioned previously, I was down in London for a few days on a trip with my university. And we were actually walking along Westminster Bridge when the attack occurred. And we were all the lads in my group, we were all hit by the car and we were all injured, though we were all incredibly lucky to have survived, actually. Hence, you know, and it was a long period of recovery. Took me about 6 months on crutches and a walking stick, but as I say, we're all here to tell the story, so it's, you know, incredibly fortunate.
Yeah, and I mean, those with the physical injuries, there must be, you know, much bigger psychological ramifications.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it affects people in different ways. Personally, I think I was so focused on the physical recovery side of things because I received quite a few injuries that it didn't affect me as much as some of the other lads might have been. But in general, anyone experiencing something of this kind, understandably, I think there's a lot of trauma that goes with it.
Yes, yeah. And how are you today?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. As I said, you know, we were very fortunate. We all made a full recovery, and I'm, you know, it changes your focus. I think it makes you reassess your focus on life and your sort of wants and what you want to do. But yeah, as I said.
Well, how has it changed that? So explain.
Sure.
What was your focus before, and how has it changed
I was
now?
quite keen. I wanted to be a history teacher, actually.
Yeah.
That was always my CV was fully geared towards it and everything. And when the attack occurred, for whatever reason, I lost that interest entirely. And for a few years, I tried to push back against it, but inevitably, I think I felt I couldn't move on from this without feeling I'd done my part to try and prevent future attacks, however small that is. And that sort of brings me to where we are today, really, with the project. Now, I've been working in this sort of area for the past few years now, really. And this has sort of been the catalyst for, during lockdown anyway, has been the catalyst for continuing that work, despite us all being so preoccupied by the pandemic over the past year.
Yeah.
And the platform is for people like you. From your experience, what made you think, OK, I can see we need something like this, and I'm the person maybe to engineer that?
Well, I'm not sure whether I'm the person to engineer that necessarily, but I had the thought and nobody else was doing it. The idea for the project came from the fact that, there's several reasons, but for example, during the pandemic, we were hearing a lot from the police and from the United Nations and places like that about this, what they called a perfect storm of online radicalisation, increased extremist activity during the pandemic because, of course, everyone was online at home. and also social isolation because everyone's stuck at home and they're away from friends and family and natural support networks. And we were hearing a lot about this, but I wasn't hearing a lot of responses. What do we do about that? And I think that's understandable because everyone was so preoccupied with the pandemic and it sort of dominated everything. But at the same time, before, not to overstate our importance, but before the lockdown and the restrictions, many survivors like myself would be giving talks in schools talking about radicalisation and trying to raise awareness. And obviously that came to a halt when all the schools closed. So I was trying to think of a way really to try and get these stories out there to combat that perfect storm and also give survivors a stake in counter-terrorism efforts, because I think that's really important. It certainly has been for me, but for many survivors...
You feel like you're doing something, you're contributing towards fighting.
Exactly. It's feeling that you are doing your bit, and I think that's a really powerful tool for recovery for a lot of people.
How do you get those messages to the people who actually really need to hear it, rather than people who are just interested in you or your story, and they're not the people at risk of radicalisation online?
Well, there's a number of ways. I mean, one is platforms like this is quite literally getting the word out to as many people as possible. And I would say, you know, everyone who's watching this, please do get on the website, share the resources, because it's great. It's all great that we've recorded these stories, but it means very little if people don't use them, if people aren't aware of the free resource that's available on this website. But in terms of, we also do a lot of work with the police, for example, and with prevent practitioners, and we're trying to sort of tap into those networks to make sure that they're getting this to the front lines, and it's actually being used by people, as you mentioned, who are most at risk of radicalisation.
Yeah, and who are those people?
Well, it can be anyone, and that's part of the whole point of the project, is to prove that anyone can be a victim of terrorism, but also anyone can be radicalised. And it's about making sure that we're all aware of the role we all play in being aware of these issues. Now, I'm guilty of this. Before I was injured in the attack, I didn't pay any attention towards terrorism. It was just a sort of abstract concept that you see on the TV.
Yeah, it happens to other people.
Exactly, it happens to other people. And I think we all have to recognise that this is something that affects us, whether directly, indirectly, and we all have a role to play in countering that and really finding a solution to these problems.
Do you think it is possible to really de-radicalise someone?
It's a tough one. I mean, I would say, hopefully yes, in principle, because there are several former extremists that they are now active in counter-extremism work. To be quite frank with you, it's not my area of expertise. So I would hope so. I would like to think, on a positive note, that it is possible. I just don't have the expertise for it.
Did anyone ever say to you that you were at risk of... You were saying anyone could be at risk of radicalisation. I was thinking specifically anyone caught up in a terror attack. Surely they, purely because they were involved in it, they were the victim of it, through sheer anger, they could become radicalised themselves. I mean, did you feel angry after the attack? Did you about the person who'd done it?
Well, it's interesting that you ask. I mean, people often ask this, actually, about the attacker, and I never really had any particular strong feelings towards him, whether that's because he died in the attack. I was so preoccupied by the recovery and by everything else that was, as you mentioned, the trauma as well of experiencing this, that I really did not spend any time thinking about him. And I think that's probably the best way to approach this, because he doesn't deserve any of my attention, any of my energy.
Yeah, quite right.
Now, I would say, though, it's potential that, again, anyone could be radicalised. So, yeah, I mean, I felt angry after the attack. It's what you do with that anger, and it's what you do with, I think, one of the key parts of this project, the name resilience. It's okay to feel fear. It's okay to be angry. It's what you do with that makes all the difference. And if you're using that to drive counter-extremism work, to drive your efforts, to redouble your efforts, more power to you, I say.
Yeah. And it's remarkable that you've done exactly that. If we want to find out more, where do we go?
So you just go to the website, www.resilienceandunity.com, and you can view the stories. We've created a mapping tool, which means that you can interact with it and makes it much more interactive and accessible for younger people, for example. And we can also upload new stories on a weekly basis.
And just out of interest, do you also, I mean, you can share it on social media. How do you feel about social media? Because that has a role to play in radicalisation. And there's been a lot of criticism that, especially we had that whistleblower from Facebook who said that certain views, when you go to look at something, if you're sitting in a moderate view, Facebook, they said, according to the algorithms, will push you towards more extremist content online. I mean, how do you feel when you see stuff like that? Do you think it's got a role to play?
I mean, everything's got a role to play, so it certainly has. To what extent is a difficult thing to assess, because I think there's so many factors at play. But I think social media is going to be something that, as we see with the whistleblower, it's something that's going to become a bigger and bigger issue as years go by. And I think it is something that's going to be high on the agenda when it comes to counter-terrorism as well.
Travis, thank you so much for speaking to us. Really appreciate your time. Thank you. Travis Frayne there from the Resilience in Unity project, joining us on the Great British Breakfast.
Now, it is 8:30. You're watching GB News, and on to something different this morning. The RSPCA is issuing advice and warnings to animal lovers ahead of tonight's Bonfire Night. Many people, of course, will choose to take part in smaller at-home celebrations. The charity is concerned for the well-being of our pets.
Yeah, for those who are worried about their pets, we're joined by Carrie Stones, the campaign manager at the RSPCA to help care for our cats and dogs during the loud celebrations over the weekend. Carrie, good to see you this morning. Not just cats and dogs, I'm assuming all pets, or are there iguanas that aren't really fussed about fireworks?
Yeah, cats, dogs, horses, livestock, wildlife. It's quite a large list.
OK, how do you, because it seems almost impossible, the pets are not going to like this, how do you limit the panic?
So it is always difficult to predict whether this year is going to be worse than previous. But I think with the reports of a number of organised events cancelled already across England and Wales, we are concerned that there may be an increase in unofficial home events, like you've said, this year. This news is obviously going to worry animal owners who have nervous pets, or who own horses or livestock, who live outside and may get spooked by unexpected lights and noises, because it's not just the noises, it's also the lights that can cause worry for horses particularly. So we know that there are lots of animals, including dogs, cats and horses, that show intense anxiety when they hear fireworks and see the bright flashes of light. And fireworks are also going to cause fear and distress to lots of other animals, including smaller pets like rabbits and guinea pigs. And in some cases as well, animals attempting to escape from fearsome bangs and flashes can seriously injure themselves, sometimes fatally, unfortunately.
We know that pets are going to be upset about it. What as owners can we do? Because we can't now stop the firework displays that might be happening informally on our road. What's the best thing we can do for our pets?
So there are things that you can do in the run-up to fireworks displays. I mean, obviously, fireworks season now runs right the way from October to January. So what we'd say is keep dogs and cats indoors when fireworks are likely to be set off. Walk dogs in the daylight hours if you can. We've just recently had a story about a gentleman who took his dog out in October, not expecting there to be fireworks, and unfortunately it broke loose. Give cats and dogs somewhere to hide during fireworks season, a safe zone if you like. So for a dog, you may have a pen in your house. If you just pop a blanket over the top, that can provide a safe space for them to go to. For cats, you may have a covered bed for them to go into. And if you don't, you could always make a cosy corner or a quiet corner out of a cardboard box. You can make a play area for your dog with their favourite toys and move them as well before the fireworks begin. We would always say close windows and curtains, put some music on to mask the noise, and soft classical music is ideal. If you have pets that live outside, like rabbits or guinea pigs, you can partly cover the cage, or if you feel able to, you may be able to move them indoors as well. That's always a good idea, and give them extra bedding to burrow into. And if you have horses and ponies, try to find out whether anyone nearby is planning to set off fireworks. Now, it is much harder actually if you've got horses and ponies, because it is quite unpredictable. And we know from people that we've spoken to over the years that generally when they go and visit their horses 2-3 times a day during fireworks seasons, it can be like 6-7 times a day, right the way into the night, and some of them end up sleeping in the stables. So it is sensible to keep your horse in a familiar environment with familiar companions, and if they're staying in their field, check fencing is secure, there are no objects that they can collide with if startled, and also as well check hay net to secure so the horse can't get caught up in those either. So they're the things that you can do. However, we do understand as well that sometimes animals may not respond to these things. It may not work. So what we would suggest in those situations is that you seek support from your vet's practitioner, or also you could go and see a clinical behaviourist and try and address some of the noise sensitivities that are being displayed.
Really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you for those suggestions, for that advice, Carrie. Carrie Stones there from the RSPCA. Also suggesting classical music for your pets, particularly dogs are quite prone to a bit of Bach.
Poor, I think that's like the 4th one this show. We
Right.
might have to have Paul's puns. We can have a little tick list.
No, honestly, people don't want more of that. And look, sticking with fireworks, some displays will be a
When you
little
say
different
people, who are you
this
talking
year.
about? Are you talking about the audience, me, the producers?
The world. We're sticking with the UK's first green bonfire going ahead. It's green, it's a bonfire without a fire, just the bon. Our London reporter Alice Porter has more.
When it comes to fireworks, Londoners know how to put on a good display. But while the bright lights draw people together, others say they can be bad for the environment.
I'm in Dulwich in South London, and it's the sports club here which is hosting what is believed to be the UK's first green fireworks display. And that means instead of the traditional guy burning on the bonfire will be shown virtually on a massive screen. Fireworks are still happening, but sparklers are strictly not allowed. The event has been as popular as ever and has completely sold out. But do people really want to go to a bonfire night without the bonfire?
I don't think I'd go. Not enough bang for your buck, I suspect.
A bonfire on a screen? That's a bit odd, isn't it? Yeah. So you're going to stand there and warm your hands by a screen? Yeah. No, I anything that helps the environment, yes, it's a step in the right direction, but there's got to be a balance.
I think it's a brilliant idea. Anything that can help the environment, because presumably if you've got a bonfire going and fireworks, you're releasing pollutants into the air anyway, so that's not a good idea, is it? So anything that can be done by virtual reality is probably a really good idea.
When the new year of 2020 was celebrated in London, the lack of wind slowed the dispersion of fireworks smoke and led to an air pollution incident. To find out if fireworks are really that bad for the environment, I went back to school for a chemistry experiment.
Magnesium is a real part of fireworks. And you can see that stunning sort of plume of smoke that comes off it. And that smoke is interesting because you can inhale it. And because the particles are so fine, they can actually go into your lungs, right, and lodge there.
So fireworks can be bad, but what about sparklers and what about bonfires?
Back in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, when everyone had a fire, a coal fire at home, the fog in London caused literally thousands of people to die every year. Now, what's interesting is that, again, bonfires are, in a sense, replicating those kinds of conditions, slightly different, but nevertheless producing material which will lodge into people's lungs. We have to remember there are lots of people around who do have lung disease, who have lung problems, and particularly in these times of COVID, who have serious respiratory problems after effects. And so we need to think in a kind of bigger way about the impacts of this. And with bonfires, they're fun, but you know what? They're probably too costly in terms of their effects.
With many countries increasingly turning to drones for their displays, including at this year's Olympics in Tokyo, the future of fireworks may be a little more green. Alice Porter, GB News.
There you go, Bonfire Night without the bonfire and lots of you. Isn't that right, Rosie? Getting in touch this morning with us on that one.
Yeah, well, particularly as well about fireworks. And we just heard from the RSPCA about, how to potentially look after your pets. But Anthony, very good morning. He said, we grew up with dogs. We always had fireworks, as did other people. Our pets survived. These events happen once or twice a year.
Yeah, Michael says fireworks are part of our heritage, so I will maintain that. And Jill from hedgehog rescue. Good morning to you, Jill. Hedgehogs get badly burned each year. If you must have a bonfire, please construct the pile on the day that you are going to light it, or have a fence around it to stop animals from reaching it. And if you can't do that, then use long poles to lift the pile up, and then have a look underneath for any hedgehogs, and maybe leave a little escape route for them to get out of.
And Peter, very good morning to you, said, personally, I dislike the extremely loud fireworks, but the usual advice has turned into complaints. Are they trying to cancel Guy Fawkes Night? You can keep your views coming in, but lots of you getting in touch on other topics as well. Yeah, we've also been talking about the cricket as well, what's happening at Yorkshire County Cricket Club. Their chief executive, the chairman, I should say, the chairman, Roger Hutton, has resigned this morning. They were due to hold a meeting later today, the board, to talk about the ongoing crisis there. Sponsors pulling out, the England and Wales Cricket Board saying that England matches couldn't be held anymore at Yorkshire cricket venues. So lots of you getting in touch. And earlier we spoke to Mihir Boza, who's a sports journalist, and we were talking about potential racism within cricket, and also about the use of the P word. And lots of you getting in touch with us on that this morning. Nigel says, so we have institutional racism everywhere. Why don't we just put all white British people in prison and let Greta Thunberg run the world? Someone else says, people don't understand the history of the words they use. Therefore, they are not racists. They are morons, but it is OK to call white people Zimbo Pom or whatever. That is banter. The other way around is racism. Linda has said some of these words are just banter. Your guest who said that people don't understand the history. Well, we asked our guest if it was banter, and he said no, very clearly it wasn't. It is really an issue that is going to cause major problems for the Yorkshire County Cricket Club. They've got a meeting this morning. We've already had one resignation. We are expecting to hear from more. Of course, we'll be following it closely. But the difficulty for them is trying to prove that they've dealt with these complaints properly. And as up till now, the analysis and the strong conclusion is that they haven't, and therefore they won't be hosting any international cricket games and any significant games either. So games like the 100, they won't be allowed to host those either. Yeah, so there are big problems for them. Kim says, don't you think some Pakistanis in Pakistan call white people names? Of course they do. Don't you think some black people in the West Indies call white people names? And of course, we're not saying that racism only runs one way. Racism cuts both ways, but the P word in particular does have a pejorative term. I've been called it in the past because my mum's from South Asia, and it doesn't feel nice, it doesn't feel great, and it wasn't just someone shortening the word Pakistan for me. And it wouldn't have helped if I'd turned around to him and said, well, actually, my mum's not from Pakistan, she's from Goa. Oh, I'm really sorry then. So there is a pejorative, abusive context to using that word, and that's why it hurts, and that's why it matters. And it's not to the detriment of other words that could be used, other abusive words. We're not saying that, we're just talking about this particular word in this particular case, because that is what this story is about. And that's why Yorkshire Cricket Club are getting criticism for it, because they don't appear to have taken the word seriously enough and are referring to it as banter. We'll have more on this story across the day, particularly as that meeting starts, and if there are any more resignations, we'll bring them to you here as well. Right now, it's just gone 20 to 9. Coming up here on the programme, well, Greta and a whole load of other activists will be demonstrating outside COP26 today, but will it make a difference? That and much more to come.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to the Great British Breakfast, just going up to 8:45. The UK leading the way for shoppers as footfall has increased amongst all major European economies in October, apparently.
Well, it should be an encouraging sign for retailers ahead of the Christmas season, after Halloween provided a chance for family and friends to spend big on costumes, party gear and food. Well, helping us analyse this news and see how we could see shopping trends in December is Andy Sumpter from Sensomatic Solutions, a leading global retail solutions portfolio. Andy, we were talking earlier to one of our commentators. We are heading back out to the shops, but really still in no way like we were pre-pandemic, are we? It looks like...
I'm really sorry, but I can't hear you.
That's OK. We'll come back to you when hopefully we can.
It is a shame, yeah.
Do you know, what's really interesting? Let's look at a road like Oxford Circus. It is one of the busiest shopping streets in Europe, yet you walk down there and so many of the shops are closed, they're empty. Look at that big top shop that couldn't survive. IKEA are moving in there. You know, the high street has fundamentally changed over the last 2 years. And the question is that just an acceleration of what was already going to happen? And the pandemic has just sort of put a fast track to it?
Yes.
So, well,
yes, I think
that may be the
answer.
reality.
A lot more of us, of course, are shopping online. It's interesting because at Christmas as well, it's more about the shopping experience, isn't it? Like, you can sit at home and you can click away and buy whatever you want online, but part of the Christmas experience is going out and having a mild wine. It's all part of the retail experience. Let's try and talk again to Andy Sumpter there from Sensomatic Solutions.
Hi there.
They are a leading global retail solutions portfolio. Andy, can you hear us all right?
I can just about hear you, so yes, I can, thank you. Sorry.
So what we were saying is...
We need to shop in person rather than virtually, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's it. That's the end of it. Good to talk to you, Andy. No, we're only kidding. But specifically in the UK, that is leading the way in footfall. Why do British people in particular, it seems, want to go to shops physically rather than shop online?
It's really interesting. We've done some research very recently about what people's intentions are, and people are definitely choosing to shop early. And there's lots of reasons around that, but I think there's a growing confidence in going out to stores. You know, we kind of led the way with vaccination rates, and we had a slow start to the year, but obviously things are looking better, so people are feeling more confident to go out in stores. And I think we've missed that human contact. So, you know, you can't be seeing products, touching and feeling products. So there's definitely an appetite to get back to stores, and it's great to see that. We saw in October, half term and Halloween were so it's fantastic to see. It's just what we need, really.
There's also a lot of admin involved with shopping online. If you buy things, they don't fit, you've got to go back to the post office. So maybe some people are looking forward to just buying and knowing they want their purchase at the point of purchase. Andy, yesterday, John Lewis released their Christmas advert about 2 weeks earlier than everyone expected. Even these very big retail giants, they are struggling, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, by no means is everything kind of great and back to normal. We're still looking at kind of being kind of 13% down in footfall from 2 years ago. So the recovery is not over. But these are positive signs, and you know, I think retailers, this is just what we need as we go into the peak season. This is the most important time of the year. And of course, we had some wobbles last year with change of tiers at the last minute. So I think it's a combination of the general public and retailers working together really nicely. And you know, there's kind of talk about distribution and availability issues. So people are kind of making their own mind up, and they're getting out early. They're starting to shop early. I've not done my Christmas shopping yet, but I'm going out this Saturday, and I think lots of other people are going to choose to do the same. You know, we had our research showed us 79% of people said they're going to start their Christmas shopping before December, and that's the highest level we've seen for some time. So you know, people are definitely, we're past a lot of queues as well. So shopping in the UK is quite easy. We don't have the occupancy rules that surround in a lot of the rest of Europe. We don't have the kind of mandates on face coverings. That's voluntary. So all of these probably contribute to why we're looking as good as or better than some of the other European friends.
We're having this conversation at the same time as the COP26 climate summit. To what extent has this real sort of drive to go green actually potentially had an impact on how much we're prepared to spend?
There's conflicting arguments on that, really. It's not a black and white issue. I think definitely shopping in the store is potentially better than having 25 parcels delivered to you from all over the globe. So, that's, in one sense, that's a better way to shop. So I think, people are very mindful. So I think gifting this year will be a lot more considered. People don't want to buy, gifts for the sake of it that just get thrown away. That's never been a good thing to do. So, but people are certainly more aware of environmental issues, as all the businesses are as well. So, if people can click and collect from a store rather than have it delivered to house, then there's good arguments for doing all of those kind of things.
Annie, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Andy Sumpter there from Sensomatic Solutions, who are experts in retail.
Well, a very good morning to you. If you've just joined us, it is 10 to 9 here on the Great British Breakfast. Let's give you an overview of what else is happening today, because the Brexit Minister, Lord Frost, is going to hold talks with Brussels in an attempt to resolve disputes over the Northern Ireland Protocol. Lord Frost is going to meet with Maros Sefcovic, one of Brussels' top officials. They're not just talking about Northern Ireland. French fishing licences are also going to be on the agenda.
Yeah, Greta Thunberg will lead youth activists in a march across Glasgow today to demand action on climate change. The event, held by Fridays for Future Scotland, will see campaigners strike from school in response to COP26. Local trade unionists as well as council workers are being asked to join in.
University staff across the UK have voted in favour of strike action over pensions. 76% of university and college union members who voted backed the walkout. The union says lecturers and researchers are angry over cuts to the pension scheme, which could reduce their retirement income by 35%.
Waiting lists for victims of rape and serious sexual assault have risen to record highs, with some waiting 2 years for counselling. Nearly 10,000 people in England and Wales are waiting for support. That's according to figures from Rape Crisis. This is double the number from 4 years ago.
Well, in the last hour, the chairman of Yorkshire County Cricket Club has resigned over the ongoing racism row. Roger Hutton has apologised unreservedly after Yorkshire failed to take action against any individuals, despite admitting that Rafiq was the victim of racial harassment and abuse. Well, Hutton also says he experienced a culture which refuses to accept change or challenge during his time at the club.
Yeah, interesting. More reaction to follow on that story throughout the day here on GB News. And today's weather, fairly cloudy with some bright spells. Best of these in the east and the south. There's some patchy rain, mostly in the west and far north, with the odd heavier burst a little milder than yesterday for most.
Now, Greta Thunberg has been one of the most vocal climate activists of the last 5 years. Today, in Glasgow, she's about to get a lot louder. She's going to be joined by 100,000 other voices.
Yeah, the 18-year-old from Sweden will be surrounded by thousands of other activists in an attempt to put pressure on leaders at COP26 to make a change to their environmental policies, although the leaders aren't there anymore. Greta controversially left a carbon offsetting meeting after urging attendees to stop greenwashing.
Well, to help us look at the impact of the protest and Greta's impact at COP26 is our Scotland correspondent, Davy Donaldson. Davy, a very good morning to you. What is Greta's plan today?
Yeah, I mean, she's obviously got this procession at 11 o'clock, which is going to leave Kelvin Grove Park in Glasgow and end up in George Square, right in the city centre. And as you say, up to 100,000 people expected. So this could be, certainly will make people sit up and take notice just due to the sheer volume of people that are going to be going through the streets of Glasgow. We've seen already this week, I've been covering every protest imaginable this week, and we've not really seen anywhere near those kind of numbers. Most of it has passed off peacefully. There were, the other day on Wednesday, there was 5 arrests, a couple of people trying to break into a building, understandably arrested. Heavy police presence as well down in Waterloo Street and St Vincent Street the other day, which I covered. Lots of police out there. Again, there'll be a huge police presence here again today, as you would imagine. The route's been mapped out, so presumably the protesters will stick to that route, but as we've seen already, they do like to try and evade the police when they can to get their point across. But as I say, a huge police presence today, no doubt about it. They're expected to leave Kelvin Grove Park at about 11 o'clock this morning. I'll be there, and I'll be following it right through to George Square, and they're expected there sometime around 2 o'clock this afternoon.
All right, thanks very much, Davey. Really appreciate that. Davey Donson there, reporting live from Glasgow. Right, that's almost it this morning. Should we get to some GB views?
Yeah, lots of you getting in touch, and we were asking earlier, do you think these protest movement have an impact on the politicians at COP? The real difficulty for Greta and the people joining her is that the major world leaders have left Glasgow now. They're not there. The conference goes on for a good week or so more. But, who are they demonstrating to? As ever, you can get in touch with your views on any stories, and lots of you have been doing exactly that.
Yeah, Tony here says, why do they never demonstrate outside the Chinese embassy? Referring, of course, to China, who are one of the biggest countries, if not the biggest country when it comes to global emissions, and who are not at COP 26.
Yeah, and the other story we've really been talking about, it's front pages of all of the papers pretty much this morning. What's happened to the MP Owen Paterson, who yesterday decided to resign after that absolutely dramatic U-turn from the government to say we were going to overhaul standards on how MPs were dealt with if they wanted to appeal. That, of course, had huge implications for Owen Paterson. They then decided not to do that anymore when Jacob Rees-Mogg came into the House of Commons yesterday. One viewer said, people outside the Westminster bubble have other priorities. This isn't one of them.
Yeah, lots of you getting in touch with us this morning, and there'll be lots of reaction to follow throughout the day on that story. We'll also keep you across what is happening at Yorkshire County Cricket Club, where the chairman has resigned this morning, and they're holding a board meeting later today, and they're expecting some more resignations there over the ongoing fallout from how they've handled the Azim Rafiq scandal. Just before we go, I want to thank the team as well this morning. Thank you to Lily, Joseph, Eric, Zach and Seb, who helped put the programme together. They are the people behind the scenes here on the Great British Breakfast. But that's it from us this morning. We'll be back from 6 tomorrow. Or I will be with Isabel, and you're going away to sort your chair out.
Yeah, stay watching GB News. Tom Hire will be here live from Glasgow with the briefing next.
Hello, good morning. Another frosty but bright start for southern parts of the UK. Cloudier and milder elsewhere, but actually through today it's dry for most ahead of some unsettled weather arriving at the weekend. That unsettled weather coming with these weather fronts. But for the time being, those fronts are simply staying enough away to give us a largely dry start, and also a bright start there across East Anglia in the southeast. A touch of frost first thing, a chilly start. Stays bright until lunchtime, but these areas of cloud are sinking southeastwards. And for most, it's a cloudier day compared to yesterday. Still some breaks in the east and the south, still some sunshine coming through. And for most, it's a dry day, but some spots of rain there for North Wales, North West England and Western Scotland. A milder day as well. We've lost that wind chill. The temperatures a couple of degrees up on yesterday, 11 to 13 Celsius. And into Bonfire Night, well, it's looking reasonable for most, with